Hi folks, welcome to G for G. Today we're here discussing the new expansion to World of Warcraft, and that is the Legion. So I just basically want to go over my reaction to the things that were announced today and kind of talk about how I feel about them, what I'm looking forward to, what do or don't I care about, and things like that, kind of discuss it. So of course, out in Gamescon today in Cologne, Germany, they went ahead and announced the Legion is going to be the next expansion pack. And of course, it is going to deal heavily with the Burning Legion. Now, I will say something about the meshing of the last three expansion packs into each other. I feel like previous expansion packs, WoW into TBC, TBC into Wrath, and Wrath into Cataclysm, and even Cata into MOP, that there was not the biggest real legitimate bridge between all of them. How Vanilla led into TBC, how TBC led into Wrath, they didn't feel like they truly had logical ties that bound everything together plot-wise. It just didn't feel like they led into each other well. Yes, there were those events that sort of got you going into it a little bit over there, and like TBC had the Argent Crusade stuff and the zombies there at Wrath, and Wrath had the crazy elemental things that you were doing at the end of it that led into it. I kind of really don't remember how Cata led into MOP that much, but I do obviously know how MOP led into WOD. But the plot line didn't flow, and here we see some maturity in plot. At the end of MOP, it led into Warlords of Draenor pretty well. We worked on Garrosh, we had him pegged to rights, he was going to go on trial, he went and escaped, he orchestrated this back in time kind of thing going on over here, and it led into this. And how this is leading into Legion with Gul'dan going down into that vault and finding the demon hunters and finding Illidan and being like, oh, I gotta do something with this dude. It's logical and it flows properly, and it kind of makes me interested in seeing what will be the pre-patch stuff. Like, how are they going to end this expansion and transition into the other one? And how are they going to do that with the introduction of the new class? So we're basically getting Illidan in the next expansion. A playable demon hunter race that looks a lot like Illidan, or looks a lot like a metamorphosized warlock, but with a great deal of detail to it. In the sense that, you know, a metamorphosized warlock right now is just basically kind of just very, very blank. Alright, so who did I have to pick up over here? I was supposed to talk to somebody. I think I was supposed to talk to Vol'jin. So I feel that is a really, really solid thing. The way that is going. The way that they are meshing into each other seems a lot better. And I'm very interested to see how things are going to play out with the lead-in and everything. I think it's going to be phenomenal how those two are going to work out. So let's see what we got over here. Gul'dan Cypher, blah blah blah. I'll go immediately. Where does he want me to go now? Yeah, bringing down the Iron Horde over that way. Fall to the earth, fall to the earth. Okay. So, that's going to be real interesting how this class plays out. Now, one of the questions that we have with this being a hero class, how is it going to be that we do the leveling procedure with it? Now, if you remember for Death Knights were pretty much the original instanced thing in WoW. They were the very first anything to deal with instancing, and basically what it did is it took that area of the Plague Lands and it went ahead and instanced it for Death Knight leveling. And I believe you, if I remember correctly, you went from like what, 54 to 58 in that whole leveling area, and then you pretty much came out at 58, and then you started with the world. But the thing is, you started with having to do TBC content to catch up. Now, they have stated in the Gamescon footage that I was able to watch live that they're going to make it a hero class so that you're not going to have to start too far back. And I believe they may have even said that you're going to be able to jump right in and start at 100. Now, I actually hope they have that restriction in place that you must be 100 on a character in order to have a 100. That to me makes sense so that you don't have a lot of brand new WoW install newbies running around on Demon Hunters. That to me seems to make logical sense. And they did describe that the Demon Hunters will be DPS and that they will be tank. And that they said they don't intend to make a third spec for it. It would be watered down if they were to do so. So they're simply just going to focus on one style will DPS and one style will tank. If you think about it, because I do believe, I recall that they might be mail wearers. If they're going to be mail wearers, they're going to have to do a lot of reworking if they want to bring tanking mail back through old content. So having to think about going back into Wailing Caverns and making, Demon Hunter tankable mail dropping in there is going to be a little tough to do. Unless, of course, they just basically are like, alright, well, you're going to compete with the same stats that hunters are going to compete for, kind of like druids and rogues. So that is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, and what are their weapons going to be. If you're going to say, well, they're going to have a new class of weapons, they're going to use glaives and warglaives and things like that. Again, that's a lot of retconning to put that gear in old content. They were able to get away with it with monks because monks were very versatile and can use a ton of what was available. Staves and everything like that. Staves and fist weapons and daggers and swords and polearms. So they didn't have to do a lot of reworking. If they're going to introduce a lot of new mechanics for Shadow Hunters, basically the way to cheese it is to make them come out of their instance area, their training, at a level 100 and put all the Demon Hunter gear in the new expansion. And that means they don't have to do a whole lot of redesigning. Honestly, it's going to make sense. But again, I think they need to have the restriction that you have to have a level 100 in order to make a level 100. How are they going to play out? It's going to be really interesting. They did show off some of the moves available. They showed like a forward dash. They showed a backwards dash. Obviously, they're going to have some kind of metamorphosis. Could they be bringing in some of Illidan's more Heroes of the Storm style moves into this? Is he going to have like On the Hunt? And there's going to be some really interesting things that they can do. And I almost wonder if they went with Demon Hunter, not just because we're going to be facing the Legion, but because of the fact that Illidan is a rather popular character in HOTS. He's banned outright very frequently, and if he's not banned, he's picked. And, in quick matches, he definitely is a pub stomper. Talented Illidan players can be very, very good and very, very annoying. So some of the other things that were announced is that we will be, of course, on the Broken Isles. That is where this expansion is going to be taking place. But we're going to be dipping into a lot of other worlds, including the Emerald Dream, finally. So, the Broken Islands, oh god, I forget where they are. Maybe, I don't remember, because I was not that big on Warcraft 3 lore. But most of it's going to take place there, but we're going to dip into the Emerald Dream, now being called the Emerald Nightmare, and it's even been said that one of the raids will take you up the World Tree and into the Nightmare. Little do a lot of people know, but if you go onto YouTube and look back at WoW exploration videos like Dopefish and other very well-known ones that existed, in WoW way back in the days of vanilla, back on a site called WoW Machinima. A lot of the videos were posted there before YouTube's really big popularity, but you can find them pretty easily. Emerald Dream has actually been in the game since day one. The original Outlands has been in the game since day one. A lot of Caverns of Time was in the game since day one. A lot of the in-game footage was available right from the start, but the problem was it was not accessible. And then later reworked. It was pretty easy to glitch into Hyjal well before Cataclysm, but of course it was an empty zone. You could glitch into the Caverns of Time, which I've personally done, way early on. You could even glitch into the very creepy and very not released content of the upside down hanging area and skull pit underneath Karazhan. I've tried to get in there with the Mammoth Mount glitch, never really got in. But the Emerald Dream has been around for a long time, and it's something a lot of people have been waiting for. Along with apparently Theralia and the two people that got lost supposedly back in TBC, Terion and Theralia or whatever, they are apparently going to finally deal with those guys. But the Emerald Dream is going to be very interesting. We sort of had some minor teasers of it back in Wrath. When you had that acorn quest, you went into what you thought was going to be the Emerald Dream, when really it was just an instanced area of land surrounding Nighthaven and all of that. It was basically where druids teleport to. It was Moonglade, but just green and foggy. It was not really a whole lot to it. And of course it was a very disappointing teaser. But now we're actually really going to be in there, and who hasn't wanted so desperately to kill one of the old nightmare dragons in vanilla and just walk into that portal and actually do stuff in the Emerald Dream? I certainly know I did, and I killed my somewhat fair share of those dragons back in the day. I clearly remember the corncob staff dropping from one of them one time and going to a guildmate. So that's going to be really interesting. And now we have what my girlfriend likes to call Garrison 2.0, the class halls. This is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Everybody was kind of excited for the garrisons when they came out, but there was a lot of realistic people saying, well, why would you ever want to leave? What would be the point of going to a capital city when you can do everything in your garrison? And eventually, once you had the auctioneer quest and could build that stupid thing, which I have not, you really didn't ever have to leave your garrison. It really was true. And I find that with the exception of several rep vendors, I'm not in Warspear a whole lot. And in some way, Warspear kind of reminds me of, I'm just hanging out by the Throne of Thunder. It really makes me feel like I'm back in that questing area right outside the throne. It makes me feel like I was doing those old dailies again. Probably because it's just very outdoorsy and green and brown. But we've lost the whole camaraderie of being amongst our faction and our friends and everything. And yeah, you can get a friend into a garrison, but it's not the most social of areas. If you have social anxiety, the garrison's the place to be. Well, now we have these class halls, and they will go based on, like, warlocks will be in the demon homeworld, and, you know, Ret Pallies are going to be under Light's Hope Chapel, and this and that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Will it be fully fledged? Will it have repair vendors? Will it have auctioneers? Will it have, you know, a place to hearth to, which my guess is yes. Will it make you occupy another bag slot by having a faction hall stone? Will it be a spell like Teleport to Moonglade and Deathgate? So there's a lot of very valid questions that are going to rise from that. Can you invite a friend to a class hall? Can you be partied up with your pally buddy and invite him to the rather green, demonic, fell warlock place if you wanted to? That's going to be interesting to play out. Supposedly it will be a hub for quests and you will have class-related quests. That is something I think the game solely needs. We absolutely need to get back to feeling like your class is a little bit more than just a skin. You know, it's something more than wearing your enemy's face and eating some fava beans and having a nice bottle of Chianti. If you think back to vanilla, if you played it or if you haven't played it and are going to find out now, we had tons of class quests for us in vanilla. Druids had the very famous Fat Fuck Seal Form quest that had you nearly dying off the coast of one of the undead zones, and you were dipping down into the sludge in a really oily goblin area not too far from Orgrimmar in the Northern Barrens. You quested for your shaman totems. You quested for your warrior stances. Then you had the class weapons with Benediction and Anthema, and you had Rock and Lock for the hunters. You even had very heavy pre-raid gear introduced for the classes after a few patches. And they, like for the hunters, you were off tracking the untrackable hydras off of Ashara. They were untrackable because they didn't have a class. They weren't a monster, they weren't humanoid, they weren't anything. So you had no way of tracking them. You just had to do it, and I think you were looking for deer eyes or courser eyes, moss hoof eyes, or something like that. Warriors had several things about available. Paladins had an amazing choice of 4, which was that further belief back in vanilla, fuck the Alliance. I don't know how people think the Horde have it so good. Everybody felt the Alliance had it so good. Their quest to get Onyxia was basically to fucking talk to Onyxia right there, in her human form. Whereas the Horde had to go around and kill all those damn elite dragons all over the place. Pallies had like 4 things. I remember Warlocks had that stone that allowed you to get a free Voidwalker, but they also had the first Scythe in the game. And Druids, further being the red-headed stepchild of all of WoW, didn't actually get any of their class items until you were well into raiding and had no use for any of it. It was down in Angoro, and I think it was something like a staff, maybe some shoulders. I don't really remember a trinket. It was pathetic. I felt so shit upon as a guardian bear or a feral bear back in vanilla because it seemed like we got no love, and our gear for that quest came several patches after all the others had been released. So my hunter still has his. It's that eye that like increases your haste and critical strike, and it's called the Devil Sore eye. So it's nice to get back to things that really make you feel intimate with your class. And I, for one, certainly welcome it, and I hope that they're out there, and I hope that they're actually somewhat hard. For hunters who had to do Rock and Lock, you had to be good. You really had to be talented to pull that shit off. Or you had to have certain kinds of friends that could help you cheese it. And by cheese it, I mean if you ran with a Shadow Priest or a Shaman they could be in your group and provide you with a lot of passive benefits by killing the local flora and fauna around you, providing healing and mana and everything like that, while you put your pet away and you tried to defy everything that made a hunter and tried to solo all these things by running away and using distracting shots and backing up and trapping things and keeping your distance. I mean, melee, it was all just incredible stuff to do that. You had demons all over the place. So you could cheese it, but it really was a skill of just being ultimately in control of every aspect of your hunter. And that's been missing. We've had no real class-oriented things for a long time now. It's so easy to get the Warlock steed and the Paladin steed. Geez, I can remember helping dozens of my Warlock friends back in vanilla with that candle and the bell and the book and all that whole sequence in Dire Maul. And even as a Horde Pally in TBC, getting my Charger, which was apparently easier than the Alliance side. Hearing about a friend of mine in the guild who got banned. He had a tune banned because he was often griefing people's benediction quest on a PvE server. If you mess things up because it is PvE and the enemy cannot retaliate, it's considered griefing. And you could be in a lot of serious trouble for it. PvP, not so much, because you can always flag and take the person out. So, I for one certainly welcome the ability to be doing class-related items in the next expansion pack. Make me feel intimate with my character. You know, Mop kind of did a little bit of a thing where you felt intimate with your faction when you were out on the islands over there, when you were doing that sort of happy kind of PvP, and then you had to do PvP for the Prince quest and everything like that. So, you know, that of course was interesting, but the ability to become really tight with your class again, I welcome it, and I hope it'll actually be somewhat tough. I hope you have to use skill for these things, because if we don't, it's not going to be worth it. Now, we're also getting these artifact weapons. They need us so badly. They're just going to open the coffers and say, you know what? Just go down in the basement, take what you want. Ashbringer, sure. This, that, the other thing. So they've released a couple things. They've said that here's a survival hunter one, and they had these spears. They had the Ashbringer for Pallies. They also had a few others. They had Frostmourne shards split into 2 weapons for Frost Death Knights. Honestly, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Soul Calibur. Looking at them toggling through the different cosmetic items for the Ashbringer really made me think of the Soul Calibur games, where you could change your weapon around a little bit and it did different things. Sometimes it poisoned, sometimes your health was increased. It was just really interesting the way Soul Calibur did it, and it seems like WoW kind of took a little bit of a nod from that. And they made these like almost like Soul Calibur cosmetic things, and your artifacts will have talent trees. You will get to pick how you lay your points in the tree of the weapon, and that's going to be very interesting too. Because if everybody's running around with an Ashbringer, what's the point? You know, and it's going to be interesting. What other items will come up? Will mages get a Tish? Or will Kagger be like, no, you had your chance for a Tish. Go back to vanilla for that. And this is my staff anyway. So that's going to be really interesting. Druids, they kind of April Fool's us a little bit there on the Druids. They had 3 cats on the screen, and they were clearly Night Elf cats. And are like, okay, so in the leftmost cat over here, this is little Tommy Druid on his first day of running Legion content, and here he is, you know, just stepping foot in the new lands and the Broken Isles, and here we are with little Tommy the Druid about halfway through the leveling experience. And here is little Tommy Druid, you know, in early raids. And I'm looking and I'm going, is the tattoo different? Is the fur different? It was like a highlights magazine puzzle from when I was having orthodontic and dental work as a kid. I'm like, what's the difference? What am I looking for? What is the difference in these pictures? Is the tattoo slightly bigger? And we're all like staring at the screen like one of those joke YouTube videos that you stare really hard and some snaggletooth ugly possessed bitch comes running and screaming at you. And I'm going, I don't get it. And I'm like, after about a minute of scrutiny, I'm like, oh, I get it. I know what they're going to do. And he did exactly what I thought he was going to do after about a minute. He was like, ha, just kidding. And it cuts to a slide of a very spectral-looking cat and another cat with some armor who was, you know, more solid, but had some different armor in the hindquarter areas where a lot of the legs were meeting the body. Sort of what it reminded me of for cats would be if you were to do this and kind of replace it with white or clear or spectral. And kind of another way that I can represent what I was looking at. Where is my stone one? One of them sort of looked like this, but a little bit more clear and translucent, and there was something to it. And of course, that is the natural progression of druids. You know, many expansions ago, we got the ability to change our colors, but the thing is, it was always based off of your humanoid choices. I really hope that if we get this, oh, my bars got messed up, that if we get this, it's more than just our feral and guardian forms that change. We definitely need to have a weapon too, because you walk around your garrison in humanoid, you walk around your town on mounts, and you're flying on a mount, unless you're using a bird, but not everybody is. I mean, my girlfriend has Ashes of Alar. Do you think she's going to be rolling around in fucking crow form when she's got Ashes of Alar? She's not. She's going to be on that mount. So I really hope we still get a very good artifact weapon out of the deal. One that makes sense, and aside from just doing things, you know, with our feral forms and what. Are you going to be a dick? You're a dick. Clearly I was going to that. I hate when people do that. I wonder if this guy is Alliance. No, it's not, because he's got my mark on him. That's just douchey. But, we really need a very visible weapon in humanoid form. So I hope we don't just get animal changes. We get humanoid form changes. I really think the devs are going to have a really uphill battle with certain classes like priests and mages and locks and druids. What are they going to come up with as an artifact for each one of those specs? That's going to be so tough. I mean, for the warriors, they said, well, protection, you're going to go into a tomb of a Vrykul king, and he has a well-known sword and shield that he's going to use, and you can get that. Okay, that seems good, but what do you, like, are you going to have balance and resto on the same kind of an artifact? How tough is it going to be to think of a legendary artifact for both, you know, for resto, and then another one for balance? Priest, discipline, holy, and shadow. I can imagine shadow being very different from the other two, but what about discipline and holy? They seem like they certainly could very easily use the exact same thing. And I kind of, in a way, hope that it is the same. It's going to be tough, though, because if you have a class that is so radically different, elemental, resto, enhance, and shaman, I can imagine resto and elemental using something very similar. But by the same token, I can almost imagine one of them favoring one hand and shield, and maybe another one being staff. Some of the classes, I can imagine them really only putting out 2 for. And will Shadow Hunters have something available right from the beginning? Will they have maybe the Warglaves or something? I mean, That's another big question, is what's going to happen there? What about all the ones that didn't get teased? So that's going to be really interesting. I can imagine maybe Fury for Warrior is going to be an axe. But what about arms? Two legendary swords or something like that? It's going to be very, very entertaining to see how that plays out. So, of course, we have a lot of unanswered questions for the class halls, the artifact weapons. We do know a little bit about the first raid tier or two. I sort of kind of want to get away from Fel and Green and Demons, especially since we're ending the expansion on it. But by the same token, the Burning Legion has always been one of the biggest behind-the-scenes things that goes on in WoW. It's that ever-present threat that has always been there. And with Gul'dan going into the Tomb of Sargeras, and it's going to be really, really interesting. And I, for one, am definitely entertained by what I saw today, and I'm looking forward to it. I do have some friends that only have ever wanted to come back if the Emerald Dream was going to be there. And my girlfriend said herself, I don't want to deal with the old gods and potentially Abyssal Maw Part 2, and are we going to be underwater in some Vashir shit again, and Nagas and everything like that? She said, now give me the Emerald Dream, and I'm there. Well, we're getting it in some form or another. So that's what I think about what I've heard today for the expansion news. So what do you guys think? What can we discuss? What questions do you have? See ya, everybody.